Listen to me, you can't have the miters too tight because they need filling, mate. He's starting to do my head in. Leave me to get on with it, mate. Just come and have a look at the end when it's done. It's a rainy Saturday morning and we have just turned up to my brother-in-law's house. He's just bought this place and he's ripping it to bits. Now, he's doing a lot of the work himself to save money and he's asked me if I can come along and help him put some coving up and skim it. Come and have a look. Now, I assumed when he said coving, he was going to buy standard gyprock cove. I've bought the materials to put that up for him, and we've just turned up today. And a bit of a surprise. He bought fibrous plaster. This stuff is slightly different to fit. We'd usually use plaster of Paris to put that up, pure gypsum. The first thing we need to do is clear this room out because I can't work in a room full of stuff. We've got a little offcut for the same size piece and we're going to work out the optimal depth. So the thing with Mark, the brother-in-law, he's an absolute perfectionist. See, we can adjust this, we can have it like this, you know. But ultimately, I think there, it fits about the nicest. He has an engineering background. That's about where it should be. And if you've ever worked with engineers before, then you'll know they like to be involved with every stage of the process and they like to measure everything for you. This isn't so much of a problem for me. I like working to a high standard, but it gets a little bit interesting when the fella you're working for has planned this project his whole life down to the minute detail. These lengths of fibrous plaster cornice cannot just sit in position by themselves. They need battens to rest on. Now, it's fortunate with this slight change of plan that I actually had some on the van. I'm just looking at the green line and adjusting the wood. I'm just pushing it up and pulling it down. You want these rules to be perfectly level right the way around the room. Okay, the next thing we need to do when you've got all your battens up is to go round and mark all the intersections, because this, you can't just cut this with a wonder mitre and it doesn't fit in a standard cove mitre. You've got to make your own sort of mitre for it. So you're going to mark your intersections, you're going to put it up, it's a little piece, off it up, and just mark the tops like this. Because where these lines intersect, when you get your full pieces up, that's where you're going to mark it. You're going to hold it up like this, and you're going to mark where the intersection is there. Now, I'm not complaining, but all the ceilings upstairs were all adjusted and all of the joists brought level, so they were nice and flat ceilings. They decided not to do that downstairs, as they thought it'd be easier for me to bring them level with the plaster, which basically means that this ceiling is all over the show. Okay, the next thing we need to do now is replicate that down here so we can cut the stuff. And we'll put a little batten in so it can't slide out, so it sits in the same position here as what it would up there. Same depth, same projection onto the ceiling. Just need to measure the projection, 3 1/4 inches. And then I transfer that to my mitre box. Okay, so you get that now. That is going to fit up there like this. But to be able to cut that mitre, it's going to come over and sit on here, exactly upside down, like this. So I'm going to offer the length up, butt it up to the adjoining wall, and I'm going to mark off where the pencil lines intersect. You can see where the ceiling's out there. See how it kicks up the ceiling? It was around this point where someone popped the head in and said, "Oh, you haven't got much done yet, have you?" So if we go from there, just going to sight it through the saw. What we're looking at doing is matching up the pattern of the flowers as well. It all has to try and join up. And making that pattern match makes it slightly more difficult. Now, as I mentioned before, you would usually use gypsum, pure gypsum, casting plaster, plaster of Paris. It's all the same thing to stick this stuff up, but all I've got is drywall adhesive, so that's what we're using. For this, it'll do exactly the same job, it's just not as nice to work with. Once this is in position, I'm going to drill a little hole about every 1.5 feet with a little pilot hole in it. Then I'm going to put drywall screws, long ones, straight through into the joists. I've started with the worst one. Look at the shape of that ceiling. This is the worst part of the ceiling. So I want to get this one done first, so I can make all the other ones, I can bring them out to meet it, whereas I can't send this back in. This stuff doesn't twist very well at all. As I haven't yet skimmed the ceiling or the walls, it's very easy to see where the studs are and where the joists are, so I can get a good fixing. But this isn't the reason I'm putting this up before skimming. But more on that later. Right now, I'm concentrating on making sure that that pattern matches up perfectly. When making a mitre box, a lot of people will rush to cut in the 90-degree angles actually into the box as like a running guide for your saw. I haven't bothered doing this because there's only 3 internal angles and 2 external angles that are at 90 degrees. The rest of the angles are all different, so it's just as easy for me to mark it off on the cornice, slide it out the end and just cut it over the end. See, this is what we're trying to achieve. Another thing you'll notice, my mitre box, I've used an old scaffolding plank and a bit of MDF that was knocking around. Usually I'll just use 2 scaffolding planks, and the reason for that is a smaller mitre box will only support one little section of the cornice and it can still snap. This supports the whole length. Okay, so this bit's a little bit complicated. Hold it in place. You're going to mark off your pencil line where the other pencil line intersects, and then you're going to bring it down here to your mitre. Once it's in the mitre, you've got your little mark, and you move into the corner, you're going to stand above it, and you're going to just saw straight down, which will give you the perfect mitre for that angle. Now, the only tricky bit is, you've got to make the pattern match up. So what you do then is, blow this and push off. You draw a nice straight line through the mitre box, like this, and then the projection there, that's the ceiling projection from the wall. It's the same distance from the other wall. So you can mark 2 little marks either side. That is the same gap as there. Now, once you've done that, all you need to do then is put your cornice in there. Okay? Use one of the guides, depending on which angle you want. Just hold it point to point and use that to sight down it and adjust it, so that you know, judging by the piece that's already up, which part of the pattern you need. So I'll go, okay, I need that bit of the flower there. I want it to, say I wanted it, that bit of the flower was the middle. So I'd slide it along until that was right on me line. Once I've got it there, I use my pencil and mark there, and I know that that then will be in my mitre exactly where I want it. You slide it out the end over here, you've got your 2 marks, you hold it, you sight it, you cut it, and then that way all your flower detail matches in the mitres, okay, just by doing this little simple technique here. For these angles here that are like 45s, it was slightly different. This is what you're aiming for the pattern to follow on. Now don't worry about the joints, we're gonna fill those, we're gonna stop those up with plaster. But see how the pattern just flows on? It just looks like it goes round the bend. That's what you want. You don't want on one side of the mitre a big flower, and on the other side, you know, another big flower, side by side, 2 flowers. It needs to flow. This piece is going to fit in just here. So this flows now, the pattern flows round. Come back here so you can see, look. See, it just follows through all the way around like it's just been folded around the corner. So now, the way I'm going to get this external corner is to just mark off there, take it back down to my mitre box. You just sight it through, like this. And what I'm looking for, when I'm sighting it, I'm looking down the saw and I'm aware that the back is where the corner of the wall is. So I'm sighting it through, so I'm not on the line there, but I will be when I cut through it like this, you see. But you can only do that by literally looking through the saw of the blade and making sure you're in the right spot. Now doing this, I've got two opposing factors working against each other. You don't want your mitres to be too snug. You need a gap in the mitre because you need to squeeze plenty of plaster in there to join the lengths together. But on the flip side of that, you don't want a gap too big because then you can't continue the pattern round. Now we'll get this piece to bust up to here. I'm looking at the pattern here. I've got to make the pattern match. It's better to cut all these pieces before you stick them up. I didn't make a mistake. I knew what I was doing. I just wanted to get something done so when a brother gets back he can see that there's stuff on the ceiling. But ultimately it's easier to cut everything first because it's hard to measure this piece whilst this piece is in place. So leave them pieces out. I can't measure that piece when that piece is in place, so you just leave them all out until you've cut them all. It's only the pattern I'm worried about. See how it folds around the corner? That's how I want it to look. Now, I see myself as quite an easy guy to get on with, but working for family and friends can still cause a little bit of tension and friction. I want to know in the comments, what stories have you got where you've worked for a loved one or someone that you're close to? What you can see me doing here is I'm filling out some of the joints with drywall adhesive. Now, ideally, this isn't the best stuff for this whatsoever, but it's going to need 2 or 3 goes of filling out before these joints are finished. So the first bulky pass, I'm going to use drywall adhesive. The only problem with this is it'll dry a slightly different colour, but that won't matter when it's painted. You want to feed the plaster into both sides of the joint, so you want the plaster to be fully adhered to both lengths of cornice. So now it's day 2, time to remove all these battens and we can fill the joints properly. If this was done with standard cove, this would have been done in about 2 or 3 hours, but instead it's taken approximately a day and a half to do. Some people in the family found that hard to understand why it would take longer. It's the same size room and you're only sticking some stuff up round the ceiling, so why would it take extra time? Nothing to do with having to match the pattern up and the fact that you've got to batten the room out first. Anyway, I sound like a right moaning git. The truth of the matter is, my in-laws, or outlaws as I call them, are a fantastic family. I actually really enjoy the company of all of them. Mark especially. Now, the only downside about this job really for me, the truth be known, is the fact that he's moved nearly an hour away. So just getting to this job and getting home each day has been a pain in the backside for me. As far as doing the job, it's been a pleasure to do. It's been a pleasure to work with him. All of these joints will get 2 or 3 goes over to get them to the exact right shape. And then if you want, you can give them a gentle little tickle with some very fine sandpaper just to finish them off. And that's the same for all the countersunk screws as well. So what you can see here is the first pass, and then this is the second pass. And after this was done, I did hit this joint one more time as well, just because it was right in the centre of the ceiling and I wanted it to be invisible. Put these leaves in. Now, in the short space of time that I had to do this, I didn't get a chance to go and get any casting plaster. So I've just used Cove adhesive for all of this. And now you're going to see and understand why I put the cornice up first before I skim the ceiling. Okay, some bits you can't see because they've whited over, so you can't notice it too bad, but I purposely left that bit there with adhesive so you can see. See how the ceiling goes up and it's thicker, that top nib is thicker. What we're going to do now is go around and skim and patch in all those bits first with like a building out coat. I want to bring all the ceiling down level. See, I haven't even filled that nib there. It's got adhesive behind it, but there's no point filling the front of it because I'm going to bring the plaster down the ceiling to the top of that nib. I want it all to be equal right the way around, and that's the reason that I put that up first. I put that up perfectly level, knowing that wherever it falls, I will bring the ceiling down to match it. So because we are doing this job for my brother-in-law, that means that Sierra Delta, who is the other brother, he has to help as well. See, Sam's my wife's little brother, and we're working for my wife's other little brother. In fact, there's another one as well, but we don't speak about him because he's the naughtiest one. But this one's here with us today, and he's performing quite well. What I've always said about Sam is, look at the face on him. Sam used to work with me. I get paid from the neck up, and Sam is paid from the neck down, and that's why he does all the mixing. Sam was my apprentice, and we worked together on the building sites for approximately 10 years. The brother that we are doing this job for is called Mark. Now, here's something interesting. You've seen young Reese in my videos. Reese is the son of the third brother, John. Just building down these sections where it needs it. That now is all the spots that were high have all been brought down level. Now, interesting thing, and some people won't like this, but it's just a fact, it's how it is. If your edges are straight right the way around, it doesn't matter how out the middle of the ceiling is. If your edges are straight, your angles are perfect, it looks flat. So now that that's filled out, I'm going to give this 2 coats of plaster and it'll look absolutely spot on. The high spots and low spots are due to the joists which run that way. So I'm going to first coat the ceiling this way because even in the centre it highlights them, and I'm going to do my best to build them down in 2 coats. So does that make sense? If the ceiling is all over the place, focus your time and energy on making the angles nice and straight. If the angles are straight, the rest of the ceiling looks good. Now see here, there's a little gap. There's still adhesive on the back of that cornice. It's just I didn't bother filling all the way to the front of it because I knew I'd be skimming afterwards, and I'm actually going to skim it in. So it looks like that. It's important not to get plaster all over this front edge because as soon as it starts to dry, it'll stain it. Now, it doesn't matter because it's going to get painted, but even still, it's nice if it looks nice and neat, isn't it? Nice for the customer to come in and it all be nice and neat, white, straight lines. Because the last thing you want to do is give an engineer a fault to pick on. Once they find one fault, they start looking for more. Right, usually you just step back and span the whole ceiling. You always want to try and meet in the middle, but I'm struggling a little bit because this is quite high. I've had to put a crate on top of here. So I'm just, without having to get down and move the crate. See, plastering's all about efficiency. You don't want to be up and down, moving things around 100 times. You want to have something in the right position so you can just reach everything. But it's a bit of a stretch. I'll tell you something else as well. People have asked me a lot of times in the comments, why don't I wear stilts? I'll tell you the reason why. I wore stilts for years on the building sites, and it was great when I was about 15, 16 stone. But the way stilts work is, they strap onto your foot, and they strap on here as well. Now, you imagine when that stilt is extended, it's like a big lever, and the leverage is attached to the top of your leg. So here's the thing, the more you weigh when you walk, the tighter that is. So I'm like 18 stone now. The last thing I want is a pair of stilts on, because it'd be like having bloody tourniquets round the bottom of my knees. The circulation would be getting cut off to the bottom of my legs. So that's the only reason I don't bother with them. One, they can be a little bit dangerous on private work, because on building sites you can clear the whole room out, there's nothing to trip over. You know, jobs like this, you know, this guy's gonna come along, put a roll of scrim on the floor, and that's it. You know, if I go over and tear a muscle, I'm off work for a week or two, so we can't afford that. All I'm doing is just come along, cleaning off the nib of the cornice there, like so, and then just troweling it in. Now, where the plaster has touched it, it will stain. Ultimately, it's fine, because when you paint over it, it'll be gone. But because this isn't painted, you can't clean it off absolutely immaculate. That's why it's important not to get it all over it, because it just looks a mess. But once it's all painted, it'll look perfect. Okay, and that, guys, is pretty much it. So let's give him a little spin round, Maisie. That's it, job finished. Thanks for watching, we'll see you on the next one.